I will never again put myself in a relationship, a situation, an institution where I feel like I have to abandon myself.
Okay.
And I realized looking back on things, the times that I didn't feel good or I felt upset or sad were the moments where I felt like I was abandoning myself in a friendship, in work, in a relationship, like not being fully true.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Who Can Relate. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I have my first kind of celebrity.
Oh my God, no. I interview those.
Yes, yeah. So this will be, okay, so I have my first interviewer, I guess, on the show.
I love that.
Everyone,
does it feel weird to interview an interviewer?
We're going to find out.
Okay.
Everyone, welcome Miss Danielle Robay to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on.
You know, I'm from Chicago, and I have a deep love for any Chicagoan.
Same.
So as soon as we got to meet, I knew this was going to happen.
100%. I appreciate that because I have the same feeling. I'll see people wearing anything Chicago, sports, anything in LA, and I'm like, hey, where are you from? And they're like, bro, hold on. You know what I mean? I just get so excited.
Go Bulls.
Exactly. Go Cubs, go Bulls, go all Chicago.
All of it, yeah.
A little bit more background on you in case people don't know. Obviously Chicago, but how long you been in LA? What do you do for a living? I know, interviewer.
Yeah. I moved out here in 2013.
Okay.
I grew up in Chicago, always wanted to live in LA.
Yeah, same.
I daydreamed about those palm trees. And everything seemed really glamorous to me.
Sure.
When you grow up in the Midwest, that feels very far away.
Totally.
You know, so moved to LA, had like $2,000 and no clue. So I moved into a garage.
Whoa.
It was free. And so moved into a garage, stayed there for like 6 months while I was trying to like figure out what to do.
Sure.
I wanted to be the millennial Barbara Walters. So I wanted to interview celebrities and heads of state.
Yeah.
And I thought I got to get on the red carpet. That's like what I saw people doing.
Totally.
Yeah. Excuse me. Reached out to a guy who was, he had like a small outlet on the red carpets. I called him, I emailed him, no reply from weeks.
Yeah.
Finally, I got this random number on Facebook. I call him, he answers. It's like 7 p.m.
Yeah.
How dare you call me past work hours? This is so rude. And I was like, I thought I was going to cry. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm just really eager.
Sure.
I sent him an email after, like, I know I'll do a great job for you.
Yeah.
And he replied, I still have the email to this day. He replied, you're annoying, but we'll try it out.
Oh, wow.
Meet me at the Paley Center in Beverly Hills at this time on Tuesday or whatever. Did my first red carpet. Yeah. And it was kind of on from there.
Wow. How cool is that story? Well, I also don't feel as bad reaching out to you and DMing you on Instagram. I'm like, I sent this long thing and I'm like, I hate bothering people and I hate asking for favors, but I think you'd be great for the show. So your story is more persistent than mine.
No, you know what? All the jobs I've ever gotten, particularly in the first 3 years of being in LA, were because of cold emails and cold messages. Like, I'm a big believer, so I actually usually like answer. If they're legit, I answer them always.
Totally. Okay, cool. So how long have you been an interviewer then?
Nearly a decade.
Whoa.
So I started in local news in Madison, Wisconsin.
Wow.
Which was interesting. It was super cold.
Yeah.
And then when I moved here, I started doing red carpets, got a job at Clever TV, which was under Defy Media. It was like they housed some of the top 10 YouTube outlets, which I didn't know would be cool. It ended up being the coolest job. Like, I learned so much and I made really good friends.
Dope.
And that's kind of where I built a bit of a social following.
Sure.
And then moved on to Entertainment Tonight Online. And then I got a gig in Chicago.
Okay.
As a morning show host. So I moved back.
Okay.
It was like GMA for Chicago.
Got it.
And then I missed the palm trees. I missed LA.
And the winters.
Yeah. You know, growing up in them, you're like, it is what it is. You don't know anything different.
Sure.
Once you get out,
oh yeah.
You know.
It's not going to last long once you get out. When I go home now, I'm like, oh God, it's freezing. Like, it's 60. You know, the movement it's just different when you're here for so long. Okay. And then right now, what's also new for you is your new podcast.
Yeah, my baby.
Yeah, let's talk. I hear you. I can relate.
It's funny. When I launched the podcast, I had these gold rings made that said Pretty Smart, which is the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
And I got so many messages from people being like, are you engaged?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I just launched a podcast. Excuse me. Like, same thing, right?
Sure.
But it's called Pretty Smart, and I call it a love letter to women with something to say. That idea has always been so important to me. I always felt like I had a lot to say, and I wanted to listen to people who had a lot to say.
Yeah, good for you.
But I read a book called Beauty Sick, and I know you're a reader.
Yeah.
It changed my life. I was in Chicago working as a host. I read this book, and in the first part of the book, the first part of the book, she opens it saying I think it was an Esquire study, that 54% of women would rather be hit by a truck than considered fat.
Wow.
And my stomach sunk because if you asked me in high school, I would have said, how fast is the car going? Like, is it a truck or a Prius?
Yeah.
I was surprised that number wasn't higher.
Wow.
And I thought about all the beautiful women I know, all the pretty women. And I was like, they have bumps and bruises and have been through things. That's what makes them cool and interesting and thoughtful.
Yeah.
And they were pretty witty, pretty strong, pretty smart.
Right.
So that was the genesis. And I wanted to create something I wanted to listen to.
Sure. And tell me a little bit more about when we were talking, you were agreeing that there's some type of clique for 30 for women too, because I was like, there's a clique for men at 30,
which I didn't know. That was fascinating.
So I didn't know there's a clique for women, so that's great. So tell me a little bit more about that clique for women at 30.
It happened for me. I hope it happens for everybody. I hope it happens for them earlier, but
I'm sure.
It definitely happened for me. I think we've been told the wrong thing about our 20s.
Okay.
For instance, everybody said when I went to college, oh my God, this is going to be the best time of your life. Yeah. And I got there and I was like, no, it's not. Like, I was uncomfortable and scared. And it was really fun, but also really hard and complicated.
Totally. Yeah.
And I thought, this can't be the best time of my life. Like, the best is yet to come. And then everybody says your 20s are amazing. Like, it's your prime and you're going to have so much fun. And I was like, I worked my ass off. Sure. I didn't have that much. I had some fun, but I was working. Sure. I was working like 15, 16-hour days, and you're figuring out who you are and what you want. You have like your first like big loves and relationships, and you learn all of that stuff. So I feel like the bumps and bruises, not that there won't be more to come, but a lot of the first ones come in your 20s. Yeah, sure. And then 30 happens, and you're like, okay, I got the lessons. Time for some blessings.
Yeah, totally. There's something that I read that said when you're in your 20s, you have nothing but ideas, but no money. And when you get in your 30s, you have the same ideas. Now you got a little bit of money. When you get to your 40s, you have the same ideas. If you haven't already lived them out, you have even more money. And then the beauty of it all is you have so many more experiences.
Oh, that's cool.
And now you're able to kind of navigate a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wait, question. What happens for men in their 30s? You know, J-Lo says that men are useless until about 33, which I kind of think is true. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Interesting you said that. I actually mentioned that. Is either on Who Can Relate or the other show, Enjoy the Podcast. Yeah. And I'm not totally mad at that either. Useless, I just think is the word that's going to maybe rub people the wrong way.
It's a bad word.
Yeah, it's not your word, it's J-Lo's, but nonetheless, there is a lot of value in what she said. And here's the thing, maybe she's obviously speaking from personal experiences, but I can attest as a 34-year-old man, I just got my you-know-what together maybe at 31. So I was close, you know, and I think a lot of guys, if they get their stuff together, it's very rare that it's before they turn 30. So that's the whole click thing. So walk me through a little bit of the corporate world. The entertainment side of things is fun. It's glamorous. It's cool to talk about, but there's still a corporate element to it. So walk me just through that and how it's had an effect on you. And was it what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be at all.
Okay.
I don't know if I had any expectations.
Good. That's
I didn't
great.
know. I had weird jobs. Like in college, I worked at a spin studio and I would like clean people's bikes. Or I was a waitress. So I hadn't really worked in the corporate world. Sure. And my first job, I learned so much. Like there's so many office politics and dynamics, and communication was so funny to me. Like you have to reply all on every email so everyone's looped in, and like never learned that.
Yeah, totally.
But the corporate world, I think like I always felt a little frustrated by it.
Okay. How so?
It gave me a lot of great opportunities, but the frustration came from wanting and like visualizing a package that I would do, how I wanted to tell a story, how I wanted to write it, how I wanted it to turn out. Yeah. And when you're working at any news outlet, it's not realistic. Like there are other people that have input, and there are reasons for their input. They're not crazy, you know. It's just like you don't have complete independence. Sure. Which is why this podcast, Pretty Smart, has been so fulfilling for me, because before every episode, I visualize what I want it to be, what I want it to convey, who I want to help. Yeah. And I hopefully get to fulfill that. Yeah.
I can relate to that. And I read a book on basically how to start a podcast, essentially. And one of the main things the author kept driving home was choose an avatar. Choose a one-person audience member, and what type of medication they take, let alone what they look like, their demographic, where they're from. Give the whole story, so that when all else fails and you're interviewing someone or you're on your own rant, single solo episode, you can talk to that avatar. And I've always kind of had that in my mind, and it's been really helpful. So, but the same sentiments. I mean, I'm always very intentional with every single episode, and every one for me needs to be the best one, kind of thing. You're only as good as your last week, and
totally.
That's the standard I have.
It's funny because in marketing and TV, they use the same idea. Like in my morning show that I did in Chicago, we had like a cutout of somebody, and it was like, this person's name is Rachel. She's 35. You know, like
it helps.
You really have to know who
you got to
is.
visualize it 100%. So something that you said, which really kind of stuck with me offline, and here we are now, but you said one of the main goals for you personally is you never want to abandon yourself. Like that's the last resort. And then also too, how you mentioned you didn't know how to hold boundaries. So they kind of go hand in hand. So let's talk about that.
They do. I read a quote by Glennon Doyle, who is a beautiful writer, if anyone out there hasn't read her books yet. But she said something along the lines, and I might paraphrase a little bit, but I will never again put myself in a relationship, a situation, an institution where I feel like I have to abandon myself. Okay. And that really resonated with me, because I actually think, going back to our 20s versus 30s, in your 30s, you know enough about yourself that you're like, I don't need to put myself in those situations. Yeah. In your 20s, you're learning what those situations are, where you feel comfortable, where you feel like you're abandoning yourself. Totally. And I realized, looking back on things, the times that I didn't feel good or I felt upset or sad were the moments where I felt like I was abandoning myself in a friendship, in work, in a relationship, like not being fully true. Sure.
That was like the common denominator in all of it. Do you think that a lot of, like you said, you kind of have a different set now of boundaries, for sure, but also maybe rules too, for just who you allow to have your energy, to share your energy, and who you give your time with? Is a lot of that predicated on just knowing your self-worth and your value system and being stern on it too?
Yeah, I do. I think the more confidence you have, the more you're willing to say no, right? And so like even early on with hosting or reporting, I'd say yes to every single job, paid, not paid, no matter who was hiring me, because I just wanted reps.
And the experience. Yeah, totally.
And I think that's important in the beginning. 100%. I wouldn't go back and change that, but I think I'm now at a point where I can be a little bit more deliberate.
Sure. Yeah. I said this a couple of weeks ago in an episode and it's something that is hard to truly conceptualize and obviously implement, but it's very powerful. It says you need to learn how to say no without explaining yourself.
Yeah, like no is a full sentence. I still have a problem with that.
Yeah. And so furthermore, when you try to do that and you try to implement that, the first thing you should do in the first group of people, try that with your family. right? Like try saying no to your family, and then anything else after that will be super easy.
That's funny.
But yeah, I love that you shared that with, how abandoning yourself was that common denominator. And that was like, no matter what, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, I check in. I think
Sure.
My whole life is predicated on questions. I ask people questions all day long.
Sure.
And one day I quit a job that I thought, I think 5 years ago, I quit a job I thought was going to be my dream job.
Okay.
And I was living off my credit cards. Yeah. I was like super sad and confused. And I didn't know if I'd ever get hired again, what I would do next.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this time and try and make it as useful as possible. And I started reading books and I started taking cooking classes. And one of the things I did is I made a list of all the questions I asked other people.
Okay.
And it was probably like 300-400 questions. And every day I would ask myself a few of them.
Love it.
And at the end of like 8 months, I felt like I really knew myself a lot better. I feel like we don't ask ourselves enough questions.
Wow. I'm going to sit with that for a second, because that is so important. And as much as we're so caring and intentional and sympathetic and giving to people for what they need, we probably give ourselves 10% of that. I'm just going to throw out a number, but
interesting.
Maybe 10, 20. It's not the full amount is the whole point. And that check-in with yourself is everything. That's self-love. It's important. I keep saying here, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you're going to know what you need, how often you need it, to be able to show up to anything in your life, job, romantic relationship, friendship, family, whatever it is, the best way possible, the best version of yourself, which is you owe that to yourself. And then the people who you do show up for will appreciate that you took the time to do that. Right.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I just recorded an episode with this guy, Houston Kraft, on kindness. And I said, one of my least favorite sayings is nice guys finish last.
Okay. Why is that?
I don't believe that. I love kindness. Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, Danielle, sometimes and oftentimes nice guys, nice people do finish last. Kind people finish first.
Wow.
Because nice comes out of obligation, and kind people have boundaries, and they do it because they want to do it, and they know that that's the kind thing to do.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm just having a moment myself here with that. It reminds me too of, don't say yes to someone else if it means saying no to yourself.
Yes.
Kind of thing too. So,
which is big with boundaries.
Yeah. It's important to keep that at the forefront at all times.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I want to go into, again, you're in the entertainment business. You're in front of the camera all the time. I'm sure you've dealt with your fair share of insecurities or self-doubts or just the overall pressures that the industry can put on you for beauty, appearance, and also just the pressure from society. What's been some of your experience with that, and how do you kind of just keep it in check? How do you manage that? And then just boundaries with that too, for sure.
Yeah, I think for me it was less about the industry and more just about my life. Like, I remember probably thinking about my weight from like 6th grade on. And I asked young girls, people like as young as 2nd grade will talk about their weight, which is sort of sad.
Super sad, yeah.
But in that book, Beauty Sick, Dr. Renee Engeln talks about how the most important thing we must be as women in America is pretty. And that is the value. That's how we get social capital. Yeah. That's how we feel like rewarded.
It's the standard. Yeah. Yeah.
And if we can shift that, it will change us entirely in how we move throughout the world. So, she taught me this. She said, if you look in the mirror and stop thinking about how do I look and start looking in the mirror and thinking, how can I change the world? Yeah. That question shift is super powerful. And I'm not saying don't think about how you look, because I think about how I look. Like I care about how I want to present nicely. And I think first impressions matter.
Totally.
But it can't be the only thing you think about. It could be one of the 10 things you think about.
Yeah.
And so I'm not driven by that. I'm driven by how can I be of service? How can I make someone smile? How can I feel proud of something I did? And you just start asking yourself different questions.
Yeah. It's not about how do I look today. It's about how can I change the world?
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. And men too can also, I can relate to that. I dealt with insecurity stuff, imposter syndrome stuff. And ironically enough, my profession, well, what pays the bills is modeling, which is a beast of an industry in its own.
Yeah.
I've gotten rejected thousands of times over the last 16 years, so, and it also helped me reframe my relationship with the word rejection, as now I say it's redirection.
Yeah.
I wasn't meant for that job yet, but maybe they weren't meant for me either, right? Because there is that too. So I think that's super important. Moving down the outline, and this is something I am super excited to talk about, and something I know everyone is going to be like, wait, what is this? You introduced me to the Chivalry Diet.
Yeah.
Please unpack that.
The Chivalry Diet. As soon as I said it to you, I regretted it because I knew you were going to hang on to that.
I was like, wait, what now? Chivalry, like chivalry, right?
Yeah. So I actually got it from Liz Plank, who came out with a book. I think it's called For the Love of Men. But I saw her talking about it in an interview, and she went cold turkey on meals, gifts, like anything that was like in regards to dating.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I'm going to try this. So I would go out with people and split meals. And I just really wanted to not have any expectations of another person and take them in for who they were and how I felt their energy.
Yeah.
And I also kind of felt more in control. It was really cool. I didn't feel like I owed anybody anything. Like their time was their time and my time was my time. And it was cool.
So how long does this diet last?
I think I did it for like 3 months.
Okay.
And to be fair, I don't really go on a lot of dates. So it wasn't like so many dates.
Yeah.
But it was a cool experiment.
Totally.
And for anybody, especially any woman or anybody who feels pulled to that idea, I would say like try it out for a few dates and see how you feel.
Yeah. And I think also too, you're mentioning just, what we value from men, is another maybe false narrative or stereotype that we have. And was the Chivalry Diet kind of a reflection and understanding of that as well? Yeah,
I mean, I remember looking at magazine covers a few years ago, and all of the powerful men on magazines were like suit and tie, really like dapper, suited up. Every powerful woman on a magazine cover was like half naked and like, just, it was a different presentation. Sure. And I'm like, wow, what we value in men is finances, and what we value in women is beauty. Yeah. And that is so much pressure for both of us. Totally. It's not fair for you. It's not fair for me. Yeah. So I kind of just wanted to take that whole component out of it.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the Chivalry Diet. Obviously the men didn't know about the Chivalry Diet. Right. But were they kind of thrown off with you splitting the bill? Did you let them open the door for you? Because chivalry is like, there's levels to it, right?
That's a good question.
Did you just wipe out the chivalryness, or were you picking and choosing on what you allowed and what you did for yourself? How did it work?
Well, I kind of felt like politeness is something I value. So like someone could open a door as well as I could open a door. Yeah, that's fair. So opening a car door, same thing. Like I didn't want to come off, you don't want to like emasculate somebody or take their people like to do things for other people. I like to give. So I didn't want to take that away. But particularly with splitting the bill, I really wanted to do that.
How was that perceived from the guy?
Some people were like cooler with it than others. I think some people were maybe like, no. And I was like, no. Yeah. Totally. But after a date, if someone's, I don't think I've ever been on a date with someone that wasn't like a nice, good person. Sure. And so the text after that's like, hey, I just don't really feel anything, like always really sucks.
Yeah, it's a hard text.
It really sucks.
Hard phone call, yeah.
And I kind of felt like if I was splitting the bill, I was more respectful of everyone's time and respectful of like the effort that everybody was putting out.
Sure, yeah. So overall, would you recommend the Chivalry Diet? And also, would you do it again?
I don't think I'd do it again because since then I've changed my view on things. I feel like...
Because of the diet or just in other life experiences?
I think partly because of it, but also other life experiences. Like I'm kind of done with gender roles in general.
Sure.
And so I go with what I feel now.
Gotcha.
If it feels appropriate, you know?
Natural, organic,
Yeah. But I would say that if I'm saying Chivalry Diet and something in that feels interesting to you, try it out.
Sure.
Part of the reason I wanted to do the Chivalry Diet is I love therapy. And my therapist at one point was saying, you know, you have to make sure that your values really are aligning with how you're acting and how, like, what you're putting out. And so I value feeling seen. I value feeling safe. I value all these other things, emotional fluency in another person. And I didn't want to value finances. I just wanted to value other things because that's what was in my heart. Yeah.
So she really kind of brought you to that moment of recognition and just awareness of it. Wow. What did it take for her to say that? Was there something that you had as a pattern? Something you kept repeating instead of repairing? Was there something that kind of sparked her to suggest that to you?
That's a good question. I don't remember what prompted that, to be honest.
Okay.
But I remember it. I remember her saying that, and it hit me.
I was going to say, it resonated with you for sure. And that's amazing that you were open to receive that, because a lot of people could get defensive. Point the finger at everyone else instead of themselves. And then for you to, like you said, let it sit with you and just
explore it.
Yeah. And be patient with it. You know, you don't always have to figure everything out, you know, right then and there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate you for sharing all that and, understanding the other side, I think, of what the entertainment world is. Maybe people didn't know, which is amazing. Any other final takeaways to highlight? If anyone is interested in the entertainment industry, if anyone's interested in moving from wherever to LA, $2,000, and would you recommend living in a garage? No, I'm just kidding. But any other final takeaways for everyone listening or watching?
I would say that if you are thinking about something, if something has been on your heart, to bet on yourself. You will never go wrong betting on yourself, and it's scary. It will always pay off.
That's beautiful. So powerful. For me, I love what you said about no matter what, the absolute last resort was abandoning yourself and forgetting about yourself and your value system. So
never. I have to look at myself in the mirror and like the person staring back at me every single morning.
Wow. Love it. Okay, let's get into the round of rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
There are 5.
I do these too. I like these.
Oh, cool. Okay, great.
Yeah.
First question is, if you could do anything knowing you won't fail, what would it be?
So that's actually a question I ask myself anytime I'm scared of something.
Great.
Like, would I do this if I knew I could not fail?
Yeah.
So at the new year, I wrote down all the things I wanted to do if I knew I could not fail. And one was launch this podcast.
Great.
Because for some reason, it felt so personal for the first time. I was so nervous to do it. Yeah.
Me too. Oh yeah. This is my baby.
Yeah.
To this day, it's like, I feel like I'm delivering a new baby, which is a new episode every week. And I'm like, please be gentle with my baby. Yeah. It's my
really
heart.
Vulnerable for some reason.
100%. Well, we're exposing our own truths and our own experiences and what we've went through in life. And for some people, you know, it won't be for them, but for the ones that it is meant for them, the messages I'm sure you receive, the messages I receive, it makes it all worth it. So I love that you said that. But what is, and so the podcast was one. Is there anything else? The
podcast, if I knew I could not fail, I kind of do everything that I like it. I live my life that way.
Yeah, I love it.
I just kind of leap.
Good for you.
Leap and the net will appear, right?
Wow. Put that on a t-shirt. That's super dope. Good for you.
I don't think that was mine.
Okay, question number 2.
Yeah.
This is selfishly so I can relate to my daughter. What would you tell teenager Danielle?
I would tell her to have more fun, to not take everything so seriously.
Yeah.
I took everything really seriously.
Sure.
I would say, while you are building a career, don't forget to build a life. And I would say that you don't have to go to parties or things that you don't want to be at.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time.
Yeah. That's great. The building a career, but then also building a life. That's powerful. There's difference between success and fulfillment, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Question number 3. What's one experience you've had that you would consider life-changing?
Ooh. Life-changing. I like that question.
Yeah. Could be person too.
I've had a few really life-changing people.
Okay.
Now that you've rephrased that.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Steve who I met serendipitously.
It's the best.
And yeah, it is. Cause I'm not sure. He taught me this, that he doesn't believe in coincidences.
Right.
And I now believe that because of him. I also believe a lot of things because of him. He totally shifted my worldview. When I moved to LA, I was so obsessed with finding some sort of success. And like, I'm not mad at young Danielle for that, because I think you do have to work really hard to make it happen.
That ambition is important.
It is. Like, I didn't have money or connection. Like, I had to figure it out.
Sure.
But he taught me that it's not about you. He truly lives his life in service to others.
Wow.
And he never told me that, which is the best part. I just watched him live his life.
Just found out.
And I was like, oh, all of this because you help other people? And he shifted how and why I do anything and everything I do.
Wow.
I don't know if he knows that. I hope he knows that. But it was cool because sometimes you meet people who will say, like, it's about service. It's about, and you're like, really, is it?
Yeah, totally.
Because that's a kind of a buzzy thing to say nowadays.
Sure. Right.
He lives it.
Yeah. That's
so
beautiful.
Yeah.
Shout out to Steve.
We love you.
That's great. Question number 4. What do you want to be known for when you leave this earth? So think legacy. You just gave Steve's legacy. What would Danielle's legacy be?
Interesting. Legacy.
Have you ever thought about that?
I kind of used to resent legacy.
Okay.
I thought that people who cared about legacy cared about ego.
Okay.
Like, it was like name on a building.
Yeah, right.
And as I get older, I think about it in different terms. When my grandfather passed away, the rabbi said to everybody at the service, people pass away twice. The first time is when their physical body passes, and the second time is when people stop telling their stories.
Wow.
And so I thought about legacy in that way. Like, what did you leave in people instead of for people?
Wow.
And so I hope I leave people better than when I met them. And I try and do that in like every meeting or every interaction. Even if I'm having a bad day, I kind of like breathe and like show up, because you don't know what the other person's dealing with either.
Sure. Wow. That is my favorite answer from anyone ever asking that question.
Really?
That is so beautiful. And I think the reason why it's really hitting is because that's kind of what I'm striving for as well. Like, it's not about the poster or the statue or anything like that. It's just the impact that I want to leave people with, and to just try to help to serve as well as per Steve in any kind of way possible. Because I wish I had that growing up, So it's a beautiful answer. Last and final question for you. What does Danielle admire most about Danielle?
Ooh.
These are good, right?
You kind of gave me chills.
Hey. This is for the self-love game.
I know I used to be really uncomfortable talking about myself.
I am still, so.
Me too.
Yeah.
This was hard for me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think I am kind even when it's inconvenient.
Wow. That's hard to do.
And I have integrity.
Yeah.
Not that I don't mess up.
Sure. Yeah.
But my core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's hard. I get uncomfortable when people give me compliments. I get uncomfortable when people ask me to talk about myself. It's like super awkward for me.
The worst is when like I launched the podcast.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, tell me about it. And I was like, just go watch it.
Me too. I never shout. I like, we'll be out. My wife's like, he's got a podcast. And I'm like, babe, shh. You know what I mean? And she's like, what? So I get it. Okay.
Funny.
So please mention any way people can find you. Please shout out the podcast name again, what the platforms it's on, and anything else you may be working on. How can people get to know more, Danielle?
Thank you. You have such a loyal, active audience that I so appreciate that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The community is definitely strong.
They're amazing. Yeah. Pretty Smart is the podcast. You can hit me up on Instagram at Danielle Robay, and all the podcast details are there. Yeah.
Great.
I feel like I love a cold email, message.
Yeah, well, I can attest to that, hands on. Okay, this is my moment, and I'll make it short. I know we got to wrap, but of acknowledgement of my guest, which I always do.
Really?
Oh yeah, every time. I'm words of affirmation. So
oh my God,
like,
I'm gonna get so nervous.
Okay.
Can I not look at the camera?
Yeah, no, you can look at the ground, whatever you want. The first thing is just acknowledging the fact that you're not afraid to jump without the net, which is wild you said that, because I get that sense, and I love the go-getter in you.
Thank you.
And being persistent, and then more importantly, consistent with your persistency. I admire that for sure. And I also love what you're doing with your show, with the podcast, because you could have easily just been comfortable in the entertainment lane that you're in, and it's time consuming, it's taxing, it's wearing on you, but you were like, you know what, but this is my baby kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I love that you ended up pursuing it. I can relate to you because this has been a 2-year in the works project, and definitely a work in progress. And then also just what you stand for as a woman. You know, I have a huge heart for all women, being raised by a single mother, being raised by women, and then raising a little woman is, so it's very important for me. And that's why I ask those questions to every woman that comes on. What would you tell your teenage self? My daughter's 13. Yeah. So a lot of things I'm going to get more gray hair about that I can just hit play when you guys give your speech. And, I'm just, in case you needed to hear this, like, proud of you. I know that maybe it's the Chicagoan that bond that we have, but I just see you. I see you hustling. Your Instagram was so inspiring. When I was looking at it, I'm like, babe, I have to get Danielle. I'm like, I don't know who she is. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to send this cold, DM so to speak. And the way you responded was beautiful and made me feel welcome. And I can't imagine the people in your life, that really get to know you. And it's an honor. So we need more like you in the world.
That's really kind.
And my pleasure. And thank you so much for coming on, for blessing the show, and for helping out, I'm sure, a lot of people.
Just real quickly.
Sure.
I really believe that what we see and value in other people is a reflection of ourselves. So I so appreciate those words, and I take them in, and I also send them back to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Chicago wins, so Chicago wins, right?
Ooh, you know what the Midwest is.
That's it. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you. And until next time.
Thanks.
Yeah.